All right, thank you all for being here. We're going to get started with the committee members, the tax revision subcommittee. I'll call the meeting to order. Well, we've got two issues, two policies we're going to look at. They each have two bills each, so we're going to get started. I think we'll start with I don't see Chairman Stevens here, so
Representative Bentley second.
Chairman Smith, would you come on up and would you mind presenting first? Let's see, you can do your two bills in whichever way you would like. This is a hearing only on this bill. If you want to start with HB 978. Hang on, let me see. You're number 10, is that right? Try it again.
Good afternoon.
That's good.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear
Can
you.
hear? Okay.
Pennies on it. Yes, ma'am.
Tax revenue subcommittee.
It's tax revision.
Revision. Okay.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Patty Bentley, Debbie Buckner, Jason Ridley, Penny Houston, Bonnie Rich, and Marcus Wiedauer.
I'll be happy to fill in.
Sure, we'll get started. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And Mr. Chairman, if it's in order, I found out yesterday afternoon about the bill and you and I have already had a brief discussion. May I give a little bit of background to why I'm bringing this to the committee? Both
Certainly,
bills in
certainly.
one?
Everybody's probably been able to pull up the summary and kind of see a gist of what the bill is about. If you can just hit on that and then give the background. That'd be
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Or the
So,
issue that raised it.
House Bill 978 is an assessor's bill is what I call it. And I was seeking help from Ways and Means to begin to address a concern brought to me by a city official who was still reeling, as we all were, from the tornado that hit my county back in March. And his lament was that last year's tax bills were due that year in the fall. And our community was still devastated and reeling, and he had his only recourse would have been to ask the local government commissioner councils to lower the tax rate, the millage rate, as a way of dealing with trying to offset some of the expenses for the victims. And to do so, he would have to, they would lower the millage rate, but then it would need to go back up to where it was. And then they would have to go through the whole process again. And he was wishing that there were just a strategic one-time way to deal with that problem. So I'm learning so much about Ways and Means, and I welcome you to Natural Resources anytime. I think we delve into our issues that are at times very complicated. So essentially, the bill before you, House Bill 978, pretty much covers what one would expect already from the situation. It describes it. And I probably wasn't clear enough. I was looking for a window as opposed to a major change. And so I appreciate the people from my community who reached out to me, both appraisers and assessors, and our emergency manager, GEMA person, is here as well. And I know local governments are here, but the issue is before the Ways and Means Committee because it deals with revenue and taxes. And so, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, may I just put this on your radar and go to the other one and then speak to it collectively?
Certainly, certainly.
I'm not asking for any action at this time. So House Resolution 594 was more the concept I was going for. And when you look on line 14, the governing authority of each county and municipality in the state shall be authorized to grant temporary tax relief to properties within its jurisdiction which are severely damaged or destroyed as a result of a disaster and which are located within a nationally declared disaster area. I was trying to be strategic with my request. A constitutional amendment is on the second page. shall the Constitution of Georgia be amended so as to provide that the governing authority of each county municipality in this state shall be authorized to grant temporary tax relief to properties within its jurisdiction which are severely damaged or destroyed as a result of a disaster and located within a nationally declared disaster area. The signers on the bill come from all corners of our state, and we have at different times experienced national disasters to the extent that we got FEMA aid. The humane aspect of what this is and what is going on is what has prompted several constituents in my area to ask if there's not a way to collectively address some of these concerns. So I'm really speaking more as a voice for the citizens and the local people, and I respect to know what our local governments are dealing with. And so at that point, Mr. Chair, may I briefly give an overview as to what has made me suck it up and come before this wonderful committee, because I know how hard it is to get anything to happen here.
It
And
is a
so
multi-step process. Please do give us, Bill,
Okay.
give us whatever background you need.
Thank you very much. First of all, we're still reeling from what happened. We do not live in areas where there is advance notice, there's preparation. We don't expect to get a hurricane or anything like this. So it caught us suddenly. We call it the midnight tornado that hit us at the end of March. It was an F4 tornado, and F4 tornado. And to give you an idea, Kentucky this recently was hit by an F4 tornado. We are so much more keenly aware, unfortunately, what happened in Kentucky than to what happened in my strategic area of Georgia. In that normally you see several deaths as a result of this magnitude of a tornado, and that did not happen to us. And in a way, it is sort of like, how do we take what happened to us and try and make the citizens of Georgia aware that in a situation like this, you don't know anything. We didn't know. We heard from Jima. We were just all trying to deal with everything all at once. And the citizens, upon reflection later in the year, at the end of this year, said, oh my gosh, now we're hitting them with their property tax bill. Is there anything we can do? And I explained to that in part of the bill. So I tried to think of, what am I trying to do with you? I'm appealing to the collective wisdom of the committee. I think that these national disasters that hit our state at times can have strategic relief, and I don't know how it would be. My thought was our local governments would be in the best area to deal with that. They know their revenue, they know their source, they know what they can do. If they're totally wiped out, it is just almost impossible. So I'm putting a whole new perspective out there for you. And I tried to think of myself as maybe the canary in the coal mine, but then I took inventory of myself. So I'm going to change that to the wise old owl that got caught in the coal mine. And all I can do is say, who can help here? Who can help here? Who can help here? Or is it the will of our policy of our state to look into it this way? In my situation as chair of natural resources, I would look to my members and say, is this a place you want to go? And if it is, we would maybe take the approach of doing a study committee or looking into it that way. I think there is the reality that our governments must function, but when we are totally dysfunctional, how do we function? And where's the compassion for our citizens? And so, Mr. Chair, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Are there some questions from the committee members? All right. Representative Williams.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Chairman Smith, thank you for bringing this subject. It's intriguing to me, and I'm having had experienced pretty devastating downbursts in the early 90s in our hometown. I can relate to the problem. I've got a question basically for the locals, and this is the ignorance on my part, hence the question. I know that we're assessed for the values of our real and personal property on January the 1st of every year. But is that really for the year before that's just finishing, or is it truly, are we being assessed January the 1st? I know we collect them in the year in which they're assessed. And I'm looking to, I'm looking for some clarity on that from anyone in the audience that might know the answer to my question.
I'm sorry.
So I basically had a question as to, well, yeah, if Clint could answer my question, that'd be great.
Sure, sure.
I've got the chief appraiser for Cobb County here, so he could probably do a better job. He can probably tell you that.
Well, let's get you up to a microphone if you don't mind. We do have.
Why don't you answer the question?
And this is a friendly question. It's educational for us.
And this is a hearing only, so we'll be more relaxed. Just tell us real briefly who you are, and then if you just can answer that question for now.
White, Director, Chief Appraiser for the Cobb County Board of Tax Assessors. So the law says that we value property as it is on January 1. You receive an assessment notice in the spring, pay your tax bill shortly thereafter. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So the tax bill that you pay, let's say it's in the fall, that has a value that we have notified you of in the spring, but is based on the condition of the property as of January 1.
So that answers my question. Basically, we are talking about the calendar year in which the January 1st
Yes,
falls.
sir.
So
Yes, sir.
that answers my question. I just wanted clarity on that. So yeah, just to the gentleman is testifying, does Cobb County support a measure such as this?
Sure. I don't think that we would have any issues with that. Certainly, this is something that would be devastating, and we would be happy to work on some things that might even be able to assist the goal of the bill. We would be happy to participate.
And a follow-up question, if I may, Chairman Smith, in that same vein, from a workflow standpoint, would it not make sense that that should legislation proceed, that maybe we could give the flexibility for affected property owners to open up the return time, that all of a sudden, with all these triggers in place, then they could electively file a property tax return stating, hey, the value of my property was severely impacted. I'm requesting an assessment on my property. Would that be less than mandating that the assessors go out and reassess everything?
I think that the challenge might be, I think timing would be very critical, because in this situation, it happened in March. The returns are due April 1.
Mhm.
What if a terrible thing happened at the end of April or May? So
Well,
I
that's my
think that,
que-
yeah.
That's why I
yeah.
framed it that way, that it would open up a special property tax return.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So let's say it happened June 1st, and rather than the January the 1st to April 1st, 3 months
Mhm.
opportunity to file a property tax return, give the 3 months from the date of the declaration of
Sure.
the national of disaster, and then that way it's sort of incumbent upon the property owner to ask for a reassessment, but it wouldn't be mandating the assessors reorganize their whole schedule and go out and assess everything.
There would be some challenges to your points, or depending on the time of the year. If it happened in the fall and it's a large county with a lot of properties that were affected, that can impact the work that we're doing at that specific time. You may recall in Cobb County in 2009, we had an Austell flood, devastated Austell and Powder Springs. We created a form on our website, and the county put it out that if you had an issue, you could fill out this form that just notified the assessor's office your property was affected. We got out there, but we had the luxury of getting that in October for assessment notices that were going out 6 months later. In this situation, it was March. Assessment notices are going out in April. I think there's challenges there. So
Well, how does this bill, I mean, absent, I was just trying to have a mechanism in place that might make it, frankly, a workflow easier for the assessors in any given county. Because
Yes.
the mechanism here, it could happen December the 1st,
correct.
and you're all of a sudden operating by law or the constitutional amendment, one way or the other, you're mandated to go out there and reassess all
Right.
this.
And I think that's a very good point and something that should be able to be worked out through conversation. You know, I think that all that needs to happen is the assessor's office need to know that there was a problem. And even if our assessment notices go out, the law does allow us to send out a corrected notice shortly after that. However, the tax digest is due to the Department of Revenue with the tax commissioner's office at the end of July. So there become challenges that kind of need to just be discussed.
I do, just in follow up to that, we had some discussions about the timeline, as you say, starting January 1st, April with the assessments going out, a digest in July, bills going out in August or September, due by November or December. And then all the couple of possibilities, a widespread, almost countywide hurricane
Sure.
that could affect hundreds or thousands of properties. And then you do have a more isolated devastation, F4 tornado, that a mile away, no damage, a mile there, complete damage. And so those couple of different situations at different times of the year, what would be the requirements on the assessor's office? And then one question I had on the constitutional amendment on line 14, where it said, shall be authorized to grant temporary tax relief. There's obviously that could be a 50% tax relief, 0 tax relief. You can delay 6 months. I'm not sure what the language of shall be authorized to grant temporary tax relief. I don't know how you would read that as
Yes.
it's just a question.
And Mr. Chairman, it's a good point. The assessor's office, of course, is strictly responsible for
Assessments,
valuation.
right.
So I
The
don't think that
commissioner
we would be
would.
the commissioner's office would be.
But I think we did talk about your timeline, but big chairman. Yes, sir.
I'm
That-
little chairman today from Natural Resources.
You're the wise chairman, right?
Wow.
No, I think, one of the reasons we are here talking about this, Madam Chair, is that, it is such a compelling situation, a compelling fix for us. I remember, I guess, Representative Bentley does better than I do, but the tornado that came through across the interstate back hit Vienna really hard, Dooley County, many years ago now. I guess, trying to work through this and come up with, what might function best in a situation like this. Would the locals, do you think, maybe this is a question for Clint, with a federal disaster and usually there are some funds that flow through, would they need to be made whole based on maybe some of the expense that might go along with what they have to do at the local level? Or, how do you look at all this? How is this viewed? What is the
Maybe it should be an opportunity, not just for the assessment. One thing that I was thinking about earlier today is we're looking at the assessment process, which it has its own timeline. We also have a refund process where elected officials can give refunds for certain situations, but it's very limited in when we can give refunds. But if we're going to be amending the Constitution, maybe that's something we could also look at, is possibly do it through the refund mechanism, where you would authorize the local governments to provide a refund. So you would owe whatever the taxes were based on the January 1 value, but then you would calculate whatever the loss of the value is. I assume that most of these properties, you're going to have some sort of an insurance claim where they're going to look at the loss of value of that property, that we could then do some proration depending on how many months that year that loss was in effect, to give some sort of a refund on that part of the property tax. I'm just thinking out loud here. But
well, I was, you and I have not talked about this, and it just was one of those things where, you have, sale transactions that happen with homes, mid-year, and how that, works legally is, obviously you're paying a prorated amount based on,
Right.
How much of that year you owned the property.
Right.
And it's usually escrowed and within your mortgage, right? So I just started thinking, how would that maybe process, be considered in something like this? But I mean, love what you're trying to do here, Madam Chair, for your citizens there and, across the state when something like this hits. Thank you.
And we'd be happy to work with you on finding a solution.
approach me.
Right, I mean, I think
Not you,
everybody
local government.
supports the goal. It's just a matter of how do we administratively make it workable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I say? So, and everybody has been very nice to me going through this process. This is not my area of expertise. And we're talking, one of the things I observed when we flew over the next day was I kept seeing these white spokes around the devastated area. And I asked the pilot, I said, what are these white spokes everywhere? And they were utility vehicles coming from all over, not just Coweta, not just Georgia, but everywhere. And then talking to one of the assessors, appraisers, they did try and go out and hand out a paper form or an ability to fill something out to show property damage. It would have helped them the next year, but they were going to do that. But one of the things I learned is he didn't have the staff he needed when this happened. And so one of my questions is, maybe as there is allowance for utilities from different states to come into a devastated state, there are allowances that help them across the lines, the law lines of the different states. Maybe we could help and use certified appraisers or assessors in other parts of our state if we don't have enough. In other words, I'm bringing to you a bigger problem. I think it's behooves us to look into what happens when there is mass destruction. And what worried me so much about all of this is some of the homeowners were retired. They inherited they had no records. They didn't use the banks. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. And I'm going, how do we solve an impossibility? And so devastation brings about situations where we have no law, nothing on the books to kind of help with this. And I found out people who are living maybe in the poor areas, they inherited the home from the grandmother, but hello, nobody changed the deed. And so, oh my gosh, I think all I'm doing is opening the window and bringing before us as voices for Georgians that my county never should have had this tornado. We're not in Tornado Alley. We're not here. We're not there. We were not, my gosh, we were not ready. And so I think there's a way to see what's possible. And that's all. I do not have this knowledge or expertise, but I think there is a humane need to find a way to do certain things. And I learned that there's a shortage of appraisers and assessors around us. I mean, I learned so many different things, and there has to be ways that we allow the sharing of our talent in our state when something like this comes up.
Well, thank you for bringing that. I know there's some devastation there, and finances are a part of it. They're not maybe the main part, but they're a crucial part. And it does appear that your counties want to be as benevolent as possible and recognize that. And I look forward to working on you, maybe on that timeline, maybe working along with some others in the county governments. We understand county governments get devastated with demands during an emergency as well. So they may have more resources than the homeowner you mentioned those. So look forward to working with you more on it. Thank you for the hearing today.
Well, thank you for your kindness shown to me by the committee members. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Chairman. I believe that's all we have for today. We'll have to hold off on Chairman Stevens' bills until we can get a little more information and get work some things out on that realm. But thank you all for being here today.